Everyone knows about Hurricane Andrew. How in August of last year, Andrew's 200-mile-an-hour winds ripped through South Florida, devastating 2 towns and disrupting thousands of lives. One of those lives belongs to me, Flip Pallot, and another belongs to my wife, Diane. Join me as I tell our story of the destruction of our house during a night of terror and of my first fishing trip to Biscayne Bay after the storm. Come with me on a trip into angling adventure. We'll ride the ragged edge where the fish are big and wild. From the fabled Walker's Cay, we'll travel to the ends of the earth, to the loneliest oceans and the farthest rivers in search of the best light tackle action. We'll pit the smallest lures and the lightest rods against the toughest fish, and we'll burn the stories into the memory of film on the Walker's Cay Chronicles.
The Walker's Cay Chronicles is brought to you by Mercury Outboards. Only Merc lets you set the water on fire. And by Smooth Bush Beer and easy drinking Bush Light. Robalo, the overbuilt blue water boat. Follow Robalo, the toughest, most durable sport fishing boat available.
The center of the hurricane is expected to...
On the weather scope, Andrew was merely an electronic image, but to the folks in South Florida, he was a one-eyed monster, a night stalker of historic proportions, snorting winds of 200 miles an hour. He dealt destruction, death, and despair on a massive scale. He was the ultimate homewrecker who struck by night and stayed into the next day, bearing down on the mainland with all the sound and fury of 1,000 runaway freight trains in his wake. Andrew forever changed the connotation of a name and the lives of thousands. He was one of the great natural criminals of the century. Three weeks later, after a cleanup on the mainland has finally begun, I visit a second scene of the crime, Biscayne Bay, where the mangroves, blown free of their leaves, resemble a New England winterscape. My heart sinks as I traverse the playground of my childhood, now scarred and broken by the same force that shaped it millions of years ago, where only last year some of my happiest angling moments occurred. I set up my tackle, perhaps as a foolish wish, or maybe a prayer, but there are no game fish here. No bonefish, no permit, no tarpon, just bareness where turtle grass once grew in great green life-giving carpets. And along the shoreline where raging seas 20 feet above normal snapped and shattered the thickest mangrove branches like so many wooden matches, there is stark evidence of Andrew's power, no less convincing to me than all the wrecked buildings in Homestead where the shell of my house stands. Here too there is also the junk of mankind, thrown up in rejection by Andrew, turning my paradise into the image of a landfill. Plastic cups, bags, bottles, and every other non-biodegradable product you can think of festoon the broken brown branches and litter the battered shore. The closest human habitation that could conceivably have fed this ugliness is 15 miles away. But the garbage is here now, tons of it, to stay for years. I fire up the engine and set out through the channels on my way to find another flat that just may hold some life. But my level of hope does not rise. The desolation is everywhere, and I question whether I should have made this pilgrimage quite so soon. I wonder, too, what it must have been like out here that night of August 23rd, 1992, when Andrew corkscrewed off the Atlantic Ocean, slid under most of metropolitan Miami, and barged full force into Biscayne Bay. Right here, where I held my first fly rod, caught my first bonefish. Would this place ever be the same? And the answer is no, not quite. Just as my hometown can never be put back together again just the way it was. 4 years ago, my wife Diane and I moved to Homestead to be closer to my fishing grounds and to avoid the deteriorating living conditions in my native Miami. But as it turned out, we had placed ourselves in even greater harm's way. Our little town is no less wasted than Biscayne Bay, and the toll in human suffering is too great to even measure, and too painful for most of us to even discuss. Beyond the wrecked buildings, the homes and the businesses, there are lives that have been wrecked and plunged into lightless depths from which some will never escape. Yes, it's true that everything is being done that could be done, but every time I drive past those army tents, I feel some of the loss of others less fortunate than I. At least Diane and I still have our house, though it was seriously battered and torn by Andrew. It will take months to repair, but my insurance company's on the case. Like thousands of others, Diane and I elected to stay home that night when Andrew was scheduled to make his visit. Everything we owned was here: cars, trucks, boats, and other items that mean more than money. But on our worst nightmares, we didn't expect what we got. For 4 hours, while the winds outside roared like a jet engine at full throttle, ripping away part of our roof and invading our house through smashed windows, Diane and I clung to each other in one of the bathrooms, alternating between hope and despair, cut off from the rest of the world and convinced at times that we would not live to see another day. But morning came, and after Andrew's tail lashed Homestead a few more times, the siege finally ended, leaving behind the rubble of countless dreams unfulfilled. Some of which lay open to another siege, this time by a storm of looters. But help began to arrive.
Hey, sir. PFC Fortenberry with the 20 Special Forces Group. Our client's been tasked to provide security for this area during this aftermath of the storm. And we're passing out a flyer, it's got some general information on there about what services are available. Some of the information you may have, some of it may not. It has a police phone number and our phone number. We'll have patrols running in the area at night. We'll be using helicopters with night vision observation devices. If you have any problems at all, please give us a call. We'll be here. Where are you guys from? We're from Ocala. The police are starting to pull out a little bit. They're going back to their home agencies, so we're picking up some of their security work for them, patrolling at night.
We're awfully glad to have you here.
We're more than happy to be here.
Appreciate all the help. We're going to need your help for some time.
Okay, good thing. We'll
Stick
be here.
with it.
If you need anything at all, please give us a call.
Thanks a lot.
By the time the roads were cleared and I was able to make my way around the terrain of my professional life, I realized the destruction was every bit as bad as it was in Homestead. A friend of mine, a boat owner, recorded on video cam some of the damage done to hundreds of marinas along Biscayne Bay, from Miami all the way to Key Largo. Talk about wrecked dreams. They were piled up one upon the other like so many picnic boxes at the end of a perfect day. People once lived in some of these boats, these dream machines, pleasure yachts, sports fishermen, sailing vessels, and houseboats, the prizes of hard work now broken and discarded symbols of radically altered futures. And I wonder now, as I search for some sign of life, what is the future of this place? This once green breast of wilderness that was my backyard, and now looks to me like a moonscape. The air is cold and the sun hides. I feel almost like a stranger here, a stranger that doesn't belong, and I've seen not a soul on the water all day. I come to one of my favorite flats, one that always produces fish, so I shut down, telling myself not to be so pessimistic, that nature has a history of always reclaiming itself, and that here in Biscayne Bay the fish would come back. But as I look around, it's difficult to believe in history. The life has literally been blown out of this place. It's like visiting an old abandoned summer home years after it's gone to seed and remembering the way it was, where in place of broken weed, rich green grass once grew. In this case, turtle grass that supported a thriving community of shrimp and tiny bait fish. Grass that gave the water a healthy glow. Where just days before Andrew arrived, I pulled alone across flats that bristled with life. Places soft and welcoming, where I could always go to be alone and never feel lonely. Here in the privacy of this place, I could count on two things: that whatever might be bothering me would go away, and that bonefish and permit would arrive on schedule with the tide. I think about how fragile these flats are, far more fragile than many of the world's ecosystems. All sand and grass and coral that somehow magically coalesced over millions of years, and in one frightful night was blighted almost beyond recognition. But I keep polling, hoping to find a piece, just a piece of the recent past. And lo and behold, on the greener Gulf side of a key, I see a shadow. Whatever it was, fact or fiction, it's gone. But somehow this flat looks and feels different. Maybe it's because the mangroves and the turtle grass are not beaten up, or because the sun has finally come out. But I'm suddenly aware that my spirits have lifted just a little. And then out of nowhere, wandering down the flat with the tide is a small tarpon, maybe 40 pounds. He looks lost to me and far from home, but just seeing him helps. No longer feeling quite so alone, I start becoming part of the day. The sun feels good now on my back, and the air is no longer chilly. This flat seems to be a lot healthier than the others, and having seen a fish, my old eyes search the bottle bottom with new alertness, and I wonder how many more are out there. Then I see another shadow moving right to left across my bow. But when I present the fly and start to retrieve it in short, fast strips, it seems to vanish. Was anything really there? Or was it the wishful thinking of a hurricane-ravaged mind? Even in the best of times, I occasionally see bonefish that aren't there. If you don't, you're not really fishing. And I'm really fishing now. Maybe those two shadows were just shadows, but that tarpon was real enough. Just one hookup is all I need to make my day. Just one bright promise. Tarpon, bonefish, permit, it doesn't matter which. Several hours pass unbroken by the presence of any life in the water, and now time has become a factor. Then I spot a ray moving with purpose along the edge of some turtle grass, a good sign. Rays and bonefish share the same diet. But nothing shows itself, and as the day begins to die, so do my hopes of catching a fish. And my focus shifts back to the blighted brown shoreline and all the heartache that it represents to me, to Diane, and to thousands of others who were mugged that howling night by Andrew. And suddenly I feel a little guilty for being out here when there's so much to do back in Homestead. But for 3 weeks I've been there living with it day and night, and now I've just come to my other home to assess the damage, to pay my respects, and maybe, just maybe, to catch one fish. Oops, I see something pushing lots of water moving right to left. It has to be a school of bonefish. And my thoughts are instantly engaged in the task at hand. They seem to sense my presence and change course. Getting by me. No, don't go by. They're going by me. I have no chance of catching them. But then, for no apparent reason, they turn again. And as I pull myself into position for a cast, the school suddenly settles down and begins to graze contentedly in the turtle grass. It appears I'll get my chance after all. The hurricane bonefish. Well, there's still a bonefish alive in Biscayne Bay. Feeling the bonefish's pulsing spirit at the other end of the tackle wakens me to a level of consciousness I have not felt in weeks. And I realize just how shut down I've been. But now, at least for the moment, everything is just fine. Oh boy. I don't believe he's all that big, but he's full of strength. Toughened maybe by recent adversity. Goodness, what a tough little hurricane bonefish. I wonder where this fish rode out the storm. Did he drop off the flats into deep water, or like me, did he find a lee somewhere closer to home? I don't know what it is about this ancient sport, but the signal of life transmitted up a line never fails to connect me to the fish. in ways that go beyond what is ordinarily meant by fishing. Even when he's brought alongside the boat, this fish is still full of fight. A tough, power-packed competitor, steeled by a life of struggle, a survivor, like the people of Homestead. He's my prize at the end of a strange, bittersweet day on Biscayne Bay. He's an eloquent, quicksilver messenger, telling me and everyone that life is renewable, that despair is temporary, and that hope fuels one and destroys the other. I guess we're all going to heal up and make a comeback after this one. At least the bonefish look like they're going to. That makes me feel good. I didn't see another bonefish for the rest of the day, and as the last light raged over Biscayne Bay, I headed back to Homestead, ready once again to take on the future, thanks to a silvery 6-pound gift of bright promise.
Hi, I'm Spider Andresen, publisher of Saltwater Sportsman magazine, with a conservation fishing thought for saltwater fishermen. The use of nets for the commercial harvest of inshore fish is extremely effective. As a matter of fact, it's too effective. Furthermore, inshore net fishing can be devastating to the fragile marine habitat. We accept commercial fishing as a traditional way of life and believe that it can continue, but not with nets. Texas, Georgia, and California have already banned nets for inshore fishing, and Florida is in the legislative process right now. We believe that if all inshore fishing was restricted to hook and line, commercial fishermen could make as much money or more money than they're making now. As the price paid for fish is a supply and demand driven process, commercial fishermen would receive a much higher price for the fewer fish that they land. Moreover, they'd be bringing a much higher quality product to the market. Give Mother Nature half a chance and her recuperative powers are astounding. A ban on inshore net fishing may be just what Mother Nature needs right now. For more good conservation fishing ideas, see the latest issue of Saltwater Sportsman magazine.
Get the advantage other saltwater fishermen don't have. Catch more fish and save money. Call toll-free 1-800-631-1000 for information about the new Saltwater Sportsman Advantage Club. It's the new club created by Saltwater Sportsman magazine to give real saltwater fishermen a chance to catch more fish. Get big discounts on equipment and services, and help save our fisheries in the bargain. Call today to find out about the hottest fishing deal around, the Saltwater Sportsman Advantage Club. Don't let this one get away.
The Walker's Cay Chronicles has been brought to you by Offshore Angler, Saltwater Tackle Specialists, and by Mercury Outboards. Only Merc lets you set the water on fire. Robalo, the overbuilt blue water boat. Follow Robalo, the toughest, most durable sport fishing boat available. A wide variety of Walker's Cay special fishing videos at $39.95 each plus $3 shipping and handling are available by calling 1-800-64-SHARK.
So that's just one man's story of the night that Andrew came to South Florida, when the worst winds of a century blew away thousands of dreams in a part of America reserved for dreams. It's the story of my hometown and its complete destruction. And it's the story of Biscayne Bay, Andrew's ground zero target, which now wears tons of new age garbage thrown up by Andrew's 20-foot high tides. But it's also the story of new growth and renewal. How one man returned to his playground with a fishing rod in his hand and found fresh hope at the end of his line. It's the story of a symbol, sleek and silvery, caught on the scoured flats of Biscayne Bay. A symbol that told one man that no matter how deep the loss, the old days would come back and the lives of thousands would pick up and go on. In time, we'll all be released from Andrew's grip.